Hello students, today we are going to learn the poem The Cold Within by James Patrick Kinney. James Patrick Kinney, an American poet, wrote the poem titled The Cold Within in the 1960s. The poem is a scathing critique on the lack of warmth and compassion in interpersonal interactions. None of the six individuals who by coincidence are stranded together in the freezing cold agrees to using their respective stick of wood. The poem attempts to portray sentiments of people in general through the discriminating actions of six people. Now, let's understand the summary of this poem. Six people, each with a stick of wood, are unintentionally caught in the freezing cold. In order to stay alive, the fire needs logs as it is sputtering. A woman in the group of six refuses to offer her log after spotting a black man. When the second man realizes that one of them is not a member of his religious group, he withholds his log. To stop the rich man from becoming warm, the poor man does not use his wood. The wealth of the rich guy is his main concern, as well as how to protect it from the lazy poor man. The black man does not use his piece of wood to punish the white man as his face is filled with revenge. The selfishness of the last man causes him to only contribute to those who also give him in return. The tightly clutched logs foretell certain death. These six persons pass away from the cold within and not from the cold outside. The first stanza says, six humans trapped by happenstance in bleak and bitter cold. Each one possessed a stick of wood, or so the story told. The poem begins with the poet telling us about six people who were trapped by chance or coincidence in a situation where it was uncomfortably cold. It was miserably cold. Is depicted by the use of alliteration, bleak and bitter. Each one of them possessed a log of wood. Bleak and bitter or unpleasantly hostile does not merely refer to the cold winter but also reflects the attitudes and feelings each of the six people had for each other. Here, the stick of wood symbolizes the resources these humans possess. Whether these humans are ready to share their resources is a question. The second stanza says, their dying fire in need of logs, but the first one held hers back. For of the faces round the fire, she noticed one was black. The fire was slowly dying in need of firewood. Dying fire tells us about the fire which was in need of fresh wood. But it also symbolizes the lack of compassion and warmth in those six humans. Each of them was in position to sustain the fire with the log they had, but each refrained from doing so for their own prejudices and bias. The first person, who was a woman, who looked around and noticed a black human. She seems to have prejudice against blacks. As a result, she refuses to share her piece of log. This character trait displays racial discrimination. The third stanza says, the next man looking across the way saw one knot of his church and could not bring himself to give the fire his stick of birch. The second man gazed around at the people and noticed that one of them did not belong to the same religious group as his, and so he did not offer his log of wood. He represents religious intolerance. He does not accept coexistence of other faiths. The fourth stanza says, the third one sat in tattered clothes. He gave his coat a hitch. Why should his log be put to use to warm the idle rich? The third person in the group was extremely poor and was wearing old and torn coat. He pulled his coat tighter around himself. to warm himself. He felt that rich always enjoy benefits of poor's labor. He did not want his log of wood to benefit rich people, so he doesn't offer his stick of wood. The fifth stanza says, the rich man just sat back and thought of the wealth he had in store and how to keep what he had earned from the lazy, shiftless poor. The rich man sat back and thought only of the wealth he had accumulated. He wanted to ensure that fruits of his efforts should not be enjoyed by lazy and idle poor. So he held his stick back. This shows his selfishness and arrogance. The sixth stanza says, the black man's face bespoke revenge as the fire passed from his sight. For all he saw in his stick of wood was a chance to spite the white. The black man among the group felt a victim of racism and discrimination. His face looked angry with revenge. He thought that he got a chance to take revenge by not giving his stick of wood, so he did not put his stick of wood into the dying fire. The seventh stanza says, the last man of this forlorn group did not accept for gain. Giving only to those who gave was how he played the game. The last man in the group lived on the principle that he should give only when there was profit. In this situation, he thought that there was no gain, so he did not give his stick of wood. Here, it is said that it is a forlorn group, means a lonely, isolated group. He represents greed in man. The eighth stanza says, their logs held tight in death still hands was proof of human sin. They did not die from the cold without, they died from the cold within. Death is personified as a human who had been handed over sticks by all six people. This stanza reveals the outcome of their selfishness. All six refused to part with their sticks as they did not wish to help others, and as a result, six dead bodies were seen each holding on to their piece of wood in the morning. So, students, now let's understand the theme of the poem. The poem explores the idea of the futility of prejudice or hatred held by people for one another. The poem illustrates racial, social class, and religious discrimination by telling the tale of six people who are accidentally thrown together in bitter cold. The characters in the poem come from a variety of cultures and religions. They find it challenging to put their stick in the fire because of their prejudices against one another. Bigotry, racism, and discrimination are ineffective because none of the six persons survive in the end. Each dies not because it is cold outside, but because each has a frigid heart. The six characters in the poem can be viewed as a representation of all humanity. It is tragic that these people's thoughts of vengeance, spite, and fury consume them to the point that their prejudices ultimately cause their demise. The six humans lack empathy, and although being in the same circumstances, they are unable to work together. They don't appear to have any warmth or care for one another. Each of them have a log that they can utilize for themselves and others. Their differences, however, go beyond their natural survival instinct. The sentence that perfectly captures the lack of warmth is, they require logs for their dying fire. Literally speaking, it refers to a dwindling fire that needs to be stoked with a log. It can be seen metaphorically as the dimming flame of compassion in their hearts. They require a log of wood to keep it burning, but they do not use it. As a result, towards the end, each of them has died from the cold within. Only if they had not been emotionally cold, the outside cold could have been managed. Let's understand the relevance of the title. The cold within is a metaphor for people's lack of warmth and sympathy. 6 people are captured against their will in bleak and terrible cold. Yet, owing to racism, jealousy, ego, vengeance, and greed, none of them use the wooden sticks each have, because these 6 people are not cordial or pleasant with one another. The cold is miserable and harsh. Because there is no chance for anyone to survive, the situation is gloomy. They are so heartless from inside that they fail to realize that if they do not save others, they will also perish. The rich and the poor, the black and the white, all are driven by hatred for one another. While the woman acts in bigotry, the black man is full with retaliation on his face. The poor views the rich as unworthy, while the rich views the poor as lazy and shiftless, that is lacking any ambition and activity. One man refuses to use his lock because he is intolerant of the members of other religious groups, while the utterly self-centered man refuses to assist because he will receive nothing in return. That these 6 individuals feel forlorn while seated in a group is ironic and depressing. Their heartlessness ultimately invites death, and they pass away holding their locks tightly in their hands. The title is thus appropriate because they pass away from the cold within and not from the cold outside. Let's understand the relevance of the poem in the present time. The poem The Cold Within has special significance in today's times, for it is not uncommon to find people driven by fanatic beliefs and devoid of humanity. They would kill even to the extent of dying themselves. The fabric of society is torn by the strife based on racism and religious beliefs. Greed and selfishness has blinded man to the sufferings of all. Only personal gain and beliefs matter. Though the poem has a sad and melancholic tone, it is a mirror to the real face of the world and awareness to the people that lack of cooperation will cause the eventual downfall of human beings. Students, the question answer session will be done in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel.